2 weeks before she vanished, her parents found her sleeping in the closet. She said there were monsters outside her window. A few days later, she came home with a case full of Barbie dolls that no one had ever seen before. When her parents asked where she got them, she said a little old lady gave them to her. 1 week before she disappeared, she packed a suitcase with all her favorite things and told her mother she wanted to go live with her new family. And then, on a warm Saturday afternoon in June, 5-year-old Leeanna Warner walked down the block to visit a friend and was never seen again. That was the 14th of June, 2003. She has been missing for more than 22 years. Her mother spent 19 years waiting for her to come home. She died of cancer in December 2022 without ever learning what happened. Her dying wish was for her other daughters to find their little sister. They are still searching. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we bring you another case that'll haunt you long after the screen goes dark. The Iron Range of northeastern Minnesota is a place shaped by what lies beneath the earth. For more than a century, the Mesabi Range has yielded iron ore, the raw material that built America's cities and won its wars. The landscape tells the story. Massive open-pit mines carved into the ground like wounds, mountains of rust-colored tailings, abandoned equipment rusting in the northern woods. The towns that dot the range, Hibbing in Virginia and Eveleth and Chisum, grew up around the mines, their populations rising and falling with the price of ore and the demand for steel. Chisum sits at the geographic center of the Mesabi Range, a town of roughly 5,000 people that calls itself the heart of the Iron Range. It was founded in 1901 and named for Archibald Mark Chisum, a mining captain from Ontario who helped develop the region's mineral wealth. The town grew quickly in those early years, fueled by waves of immigrants from Finland, Slovenia, Italy, Norway, and Sweden. Men who came to work the mines, and women who built communities around them. By 1908, Chisum had more than 6,000 residents and 500 buildings. That September, a fast-moving forest fire destroyed nearly everything. The wooden structures offered no resistance to the flames. Residents escaped into Longyear Lake, standing in the water as their town burned. No one died, but Chisum was reduced to ashes. They rebuilt in brick and stone, determined that fire would never destroy them again. By 2003, Chisum had settled into the rhythms of a small Minnesota town. The mines still operated, though automation had reduced the workforce to a fraction of what it had been at the peak. Taconite processing had replaced the direct shipping of iron ore. The economy had diversified, but mining remained the foundation. The population was overwhelmingly white, descended from those European immigrants who had come a century before. The Iron Range had developed its own distinct culture, its own accent, its own identity. Locals called it Da Range, their speech patterns marking them as natives of this isolated corner of the upper Midwest. It was the kind of place where children still played outside, unsupervised, where neighbors knew each other's names, where screen doors were left unlocked, and kids rode their bikes until dark. The crime rate was low. The pace was slow. Parents let their children walk to friends' houses without worry. Nothing bad happened in Chisum. It was safe. The Warner family had moved to Chisum just a few months before the summer of 2003. Christopher Warner worked at one of the local mines and served as a volunteer EMT, responding to emergencies when needed. His partner, Tiffany Kaylin Whitaker, who went by Kaylin, had met Christopher in late 1996. Both had been previously divorced and had children from their earlier marriages. Kaylin had 2 daughters, Carly and Whitney, who were 10 and 9 years old in 2003. They lived part-time with their father. Together, Christopher and Kaylin had 1 child, Leeanna Marie Warner, born on the 21st of January 1998. Everyone called her Beaner. The nickname came from her size at birth. She had been tiny, like a little bean, and the name stuck. Family and friends used it interchangeably with her given name. Beaner was 5 years old in the summer of 2003, a bundle of contradictions like many children her age. She was a tomboy who loved playing in the mud and hated wearing shoes. She was also a girly girl who would sneak her older sister's lipstick, loved playing with Barbies, and always wore her sparkly princess crown. She had brown hair cut in a short bob and brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Leanna was fearless. She was outgoing and friendly, the kind of child who would talk to anyone, who would wander off to explore without a second thought. Her parents noted that she had survival instincts that seemed advanced for her age. She was comfortable navigating her neighborhood on her own, making the short walk from her house to her friend's house without needing an adult to accompany her. She had done it many times before. It was safe. Nothing bad happened in Chisum. The Warner home sat at 19 Southwest 2nd Street, a modest house in a residential neighborhood that bordered Longyear Lake. The lake was named for E.J. Longyear, the prospector who had discovered the first mine in the area back in 1892. It served as a local swimming hole, a gathering place for families during the warm summer months. The neighborhood was quiet. The streets lined with older homes, the kind of place where children could play in their yards and parents could watch from their porches. Leanna's friend lived about a block and a half away, a short walk that she knew by heart. In the weeks before the 14th of June, 2003, something changed. Leanna began behaving strangely, and her parents would remember these incidents with terrible clarity after she was gone. It started with the Barbie dolls. One day, Leanna came home carrying a case full of Barbies and Barbie clothes. Christopher and Kaylin had never seen these toys before. They had not purchased them for their daughter. The case was substantial, containing multiple dolls and outfits, the kind of gift that would have cost real money. When they asked Leanna where she had gotten them, she gave a simple answer. A little old lady had given them to her. The response was strange, but not alarming. Chisum was a small town. Perhaps an elderly neighbor had given away old toys to a friendly child who had charmed her. Christopher and Kaylin did not know who this woman was, but they did not press the issue. Leanna was happy with her new dolls. They let it go. After she vanished, they would wonder endlessly about the little old lady. Who was she? Where did she live? What was her connection to their daughter? The woman was never identified. The source of the Barbie dolls remained a mystery, a clue that led nowhere. About a week before she disappeared, Leanna did something that disturbed her parents deeply. She packed a suitcase with all her favorite things, her treasured possessions, the items that meant the most to her. Then she told her mother she wanted to go live with her new family. The statement made no sense. What new family? Leanna had a family. She had a mother and father and 2 older sisters who loved her. Why would she want to leave? When Kaylin pressed her for details, Leanna did not elaborate. She did not explain who this new family was or where they lived. The statement hung in the air, inexplicable and troubling. Kaylin unpacked the suitcase and tried to forget about it, but she could not forget. The words echoed in her mind after Leanna was gone. A new family. Had someone promised her daughter a new family? Had someone been talking to her, preparing her for something? A few days later, Christopher and Kaylin found Leanna sleeping in her closet instead of her bed. She had a perfectly good bed, comfortable and familiar. Why was she on the floor of the closet? When they asked, Leanna said she was scared. She said there were monsters outside her window. Christopher took the claim seriously. He went outside and examined the ground beneath Leanna's bedroom window, looking for footprints, for any sign that someone had been lurking there. He found nothing. The window was fairly high off the ground, not easily accessible. But the fear was real. His 5-year-old daughter was afraid of something, and he did not know what. He tried to reassure her. He told her the monsters would not get her. But the incident stayed with him. Our flags went up at that time, he would later say. Something was wrong, but he did not know what. These incidents, taken together, paint a disturbing picture that investigators and true crime researchers have analyzed endlessly. A child receiving gifts from an unknown adult. A child talking about going to live with a new family. A child suddenly afraid of something outside her window. The pattern suggests grooming, the process by which predators build relationships with children, gaining their trust, preparing them for abuse or abduction. If someone had been targeting Leanna, these incidents might have been signs of that process in action. But at the time, they were just strange moments, unsettling but not alarming enough to prompt action. Parents cannot call the police because their child received toys from a neighbor or said something unusual. The incidents were noted and then set aside. Life continued. Summer arrived, And then June 14 came. Saturday, the 14th of June, 2003, was a warm day in Chisum, the kind of early summer day that Minnesota residents cherish after the long winter. Kaylin took Leanna and her older daughter Carly to the Side Lake Rummage Sale, a local event where families browsed tables of secondhand goods. Afterward, they went to a friend's lake house to cool off. It was a pleasant day, unremarkable in every way. The kind of day that becomes seared into memory only because of what came after. The family returned home in the late afternoon. Leanna had napped in the car on the way back, and by the time they arrived, she had caught her second wind. She was energetic, eager to play. Kaylin suggested she rest, but Leanna wanted to visit her friend who lived down the street. The friend's house was about a block and a half away, a short walk that Leanna had made many times before. Kaylin was hesitant, but she relented. She told Leanna to be home by 5 o'clock. At approximately 4:30 inches the afternoon, Leanna walked out the door. She was wearing a sleeveless blue denim dress with a belt and orange Hanes underwear. A flower earring with a red garnet stone hung from her right ear. She was barefoot, as she often was during the summer. She did not take anything with her. No toys, no bag. She walked down the sidewalk toward her friend's house, a journey she had made countless times before. When Leanna arrived at her friend's house, no one was home. The family was out. Leanna stood at the door, perhaps knocked, perhaps waited. Then she turned around and started walking back toward her own home. Neighbors saw her walking on Southwest 2nd or 3rd Street between 5 and 5, 15 inches the evening. She was walking in the direction of her house, barefoot in her blue denim dress. And then she was gone. 5 o'clock came and went. Leanna did not return home. At first, Kaylin was not overly concerned. Children lose track of time. Perhaps Leanna had found another friend to play with, or had stopped to explore something interesting. But as the minutes ticked by and there was no sign of her daughter, Kaylin's concern grew into worry, and worry into fear. She sent Carly out on her bike to look for her sister. The 10-year-old rode through the neighborhood, calling Leanna's name, expecting to find her playing somewhere nearby. But Leanna was not there. Carly rode in widening circles, her voice growing hoarse, her panic rising. She could not find her sister. She returned home with no news. By 5:30, Kaylin's worry had transformed into full-blown panic. She began enlisting neighbors to help search. Parents and children from the surrounding blocks gathered together, fanning out through the neighborhood. They checked garages and sheds and backyards. They called Leanna's name, their voices carrying through the quiet streets of Chisum. The search party grew as evening approached. More and more people joining the effort, the whole neighborhood mobilizing to find a missing child. Christopher Warner was not home when his daughter disappeared. He was on duty as a volunteer EMT, responding to emergencies elsewhere in the area. He had spent the day helping strangers, unaware that the greatest emergency of his life was unfolding at his own home. When he returned that evening and learned what had happened, he was devastated. His little girl was missing, and he had not been there. By 9:00 inches the evening, with no sign of Leanna despite hours of searching, the Warners contacted the Chisum Police Department. Some would later question why Kaylin waited so long to make the call, but she had spent those hours searching, believing that Leanna must be somewhere nearby. The call to police felt like an admission that something terrible had happened, and Kaylin had not been ready to accept that. Now, as darkness fell, and her daughter remained missing, she had no choice. The Chisum Police Department responded immediately. Officers arrived at the Warner home and took control of the search effort. A combination of police, firefighters, local volunteers, and expert trackers gathered to search the town. Bloodhounds were brought to the scene and given an article of Leanna's clothing to establish her scent. The dogs picked up Leanna's trail and followed it from the Warner home toward the friend's house, the same route she would have walked that afternoon. The scent led through the neighborhood, along the streets she knew so well. And then, at the edge of a road, the trail ended. The dogs lost the scent. It simply stopped, as if Leanna had ceased to exist at that spot. The implication was clear and terrible. Leanna had gotten into a vehicle. Someone had picked her up, either by force or by persuasion. and driven away with her. The bloodhounds could track a scent on foot, but they could not follow a car. Wherever Lyanna had gone, she had not walked there. The search expanded in the days that followed. Hundreds of volunteers joined police and firefighters in combing every inch of Chisum and the surrounding areas. The response was massive, a testament to how seriously the community took the disappearance of a child, a reflection of the close-knit nature of this Iron Range town where everyone knew everyone and a missing child was everyone's emergency. Search teams were organized into grids, each assigned a specific area to examine systematically. Coordinators mapped the terrain and assigned sectors, ensuring that no ground would be missed. They walked through fields and forests, pushing through underbrush and tall grass, calling Lyanna's name, hoping to hear a small voice respond. They searched the shores of Long Year Lake, looking for footprints, for disturbed vegetation, for any sign that a child had been there. They waded into the shallows, probing the murky water. They checked the abandoned mining structures that dotted the landscape, the old shafts and tunnels and equipment buildings that were relics of the Iron Range's industrial past. Some of these structures were dangerous, with unstable floors and collapsing walls. But volunteers searched them anyway, desperate to find any trace of the missing girl. The terrain around Chisholm posed significant challenges. The Iron Range is scarred by more than a century of mining, pockmarked with open-pit mines that have become filled with water, vast craters that could swallow a body and never give it back. The forests are dense, with second-growth timber, the undergrowth thick and tangled. The region is dotted with lakes and wetlands, places where searchers could not easily walk, places where evidence could be hidden forever. A small child could easily become lost in such an environment. A small child could easily be hidden there as well. The searchers feared two outcomes, both terrible. They feared finding Lyanna dead, her small body discarded somewhere in the wilderness. But they also feared not finding her at all, which would mean she had been taken somewhere far from Chisum, somewhere beyond their reach, somewhere they might never be able to search. A month after Lyanna disappeared, a local resident discovered child's footprints near Long Year Lake. The discovery was both hopeful and heartbreaking, a potential clue that might indicate Lyanna had been at the lake after her disappearance. The Chisum Police Department made the dramatic decision to partially drain the lake, hoping to find evidence of what had happened to the missing girl. The operation was massive. Heavy equipment was brought in to pump water from the lake. The water level dropped, exposing sections of the lakebed and shoreline that had not been visible before. Searchers examined every inch of the exposed area, looking for clothing, for personal items, for any trace of Leeanna Warner. They found nothing. The lake yielded no answers. Winter arrived before the search could be completed. The brutal cold of northern Minnesota made further investigation impossible. Long Year Lake froze solid, and the surrounding landscape was buried under snow. When summer returned in 2004, authorities launched another extensive search of the Chisum area, focusing on locations that had not been thoroughly examined the previous year. Once again, they found nothing. No further official searches have been scheduled since. The investigation quickly became one of the most puzzling cases in Minnesota history. There was no crime scene to examine, no physical evidence to analyze, no witnesses who saw Lyanna being taken. The bloodhounds had tracked her scent to the edge of a road, but that was all. Beyond that point, there was nothing. No clothing left behind, no signs of a struggle, no dropped items. It was as if the 5-year-old had simply ceased to exist. The most significant thing that always stood out about this case was the lack of information or knowing what had happened, Chisholm Police Chief Vern Manor would later say. Manor had been one of the investigators who worked on the case from the beginning. Even in the Jacob Wetterling case, they knew from the start what they were investigating. This case, we still only have theories, as we have no evidence to say what happened. In the first 50 days of the investigation, police followed up on more than 1,300 tips. The calls came from across the country, from people who thought they had seen Lyanna, from people who wanted to help, from people who claimed to have psychic visions about her location. Experienced officers said they had never worked a case with so little information. Every lead seemed to evaporate. Every potential witness had nothing useful to offer. Several witnesses came forward with reports of unfamiliar vehicles in the area on the day Lyanna disappeared. One described a blue two-door Cadillac driven by a bald or shaven-headed black man. Another reported a rusty brown pickup truck operated by a Caucasian man with black curly hair. A third witness described seeing a man in his mid-30s, approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighing about 155 pounds, with a dark tattoo resembling a star or sun on his right arm, walking on foot in the neighborhood between 5 and 15 inches the evening. None of these individuals were ever identified. None of the vehicles were ever found. Police noted that several events had been happening in and around Chisum at the time of Lyanna's disappearance. A jazz festival was being held in town, drawing visitors from the surrounding area. Groups of motorcyclists had arrived for a rally. The influx of outsiders meant that unfamiliar faces and vehicles would have been more common than usual, making it harder to identify anyone who did not belong. Investigators obtained guest lists from motels and names of people staying at nearby campgrounds. None of these leads produced results. As the investigation continued, police began to focus on potential suspects. One name emerged early: Matthew James Curtis, a 24-year-old man who lived in Chisum just down the street from the Warner home. Curtis came to police attention due to his proximity to the missing child and his behavior during the investigation. He would have been familiar to the children in the neighborhood, close enough that he might have known Lyanna by sight, close enough to have interacted with her. Curtis was interrogated multiple times about a possible connection to Lyanna's disappearance. His responses troubled investigators. During one of these interrogations, police became suspicious enough to seek a warrant. When they executed the warrant and searched Curtis's residence, they discovered child pornography on his computer. The discovery was deeply disturbing. Here was a man who lived within walking distance of a missing child, a man who possessed material depicting the sexual abuse of children. The circumstantial connection was impossible to ignore. Curtis was arrested and charged with possession of child pornography. Police also obtained a warrant to search his pickup truck and collect DNA samples. The truck was examined minutely. Every surface swabbed for biological evidence. Every crevice searched for fibers or hairs that might connect Curtis to the missing girl. However, the extensive search revealed nothing. There was no evidence that Lyanna had ever been inside his vehicle. There was nothing to directly connect Curtis to her disappearance. Curtis was released on bail and scheduled to appear in court for the child pornography charges. The charges were serious, carrying potential prison time and mandatory registration as a sex offender. Whether he was guilty of something more than possessing child pornography remained unclear. The investigation was ongoing, and Curtis remained a person of interest. On September 2003, the day before his scheduled court appearance, Matthew James Curtis was found dead. His body was discovered in his pickup truck at a gravel pit approximately 8 or 9 miles outside of Chisum. The scene suggested suicide. Curtis had suffocated himself with a plastic bag. The timing, the day before he was to face justice for the child pornography charges, suggested a man who could not face the consequences of his actions, or perhaps a man with darker secrets he could not allow to come to light. The sheriff's department treated the death scene with unusual care. They set up a command post at the gravel pit and requested assistance from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Search teams examined the area surrounding the death scene, looking for any sign that Lyanna's body might be nearby. They found nothing. A search warrant was executed at Curtis's home. Again, nothing was found to link him to Lyanna. The investigation into Curtis's death was closed and officially ruled a suicide, but controversy surrounded the determination. Some believed Curtis had taken his own life because he was guilty, because he could not face what he had done. Others believed he had been murdered, his body staged to look like a suicide, perhaps by someone who wanted to silence him before he could reveal the truth. There is no evidence to support the murder theory, but there is also no definitive proof that Curtis had anything to do with Leeanna Warner. His death closed off a potential avenue of investigation, leaving behind only questions. All the agencies that worked on the case would have liked to have followed up with Matt Street, Lewis County Sheriff Ross Littman would later say, to try to determine what, if any, involvement he had. Unfortunately, that ended when he took his own life. Littman called Curtis the best lead that ever came forward in the case. Another name surfaced in connection with Leanna's disappearance: Joseph Edward Duncan III, a convicted sex offender with a horrifying history of violence against children. In 2005, Duncan was arrested for the murders of a family in Birchwood, Idaho, and the kidnapping and sexual assault of two children, Dylan and Shasta Groen. He had killed the children's mother, her boyfriend, and their older brother before taking Dylan and Shasta into the wilderness, where he subjected them to weeks of torture and abuse. Dylan was eventually killed. Shasta was recovered alive after Duncan brought her to a restaurant and a waitress recognized her from news reports. When authorities examined Duncan's computer, they found an encrypted document that referenced Leeanna Warner's disappearance. Duncan also maintained an online diary, and in 2004, he had written about his fear that he would be blamed for Leanna's disappearance. He expressed dissatisfaction with being investigated and complained about being labeled a sex offender. The combination of the encrypted document and the diary entries made investigators take notice. Here was a known predator, a man capable of unspeakable crimes against children who seemed to have knowledge of a missing Minnesota girl. Investigators from the Chisum Police Department examined Duncan's activities around the time of Leanna's disappearance. They constructed a timeline of his movements, looking for any period during which he might have been in the Chisum area. However, the timeline revealed that Duncan had not been in northeastern Minnesota on the 14th of June 2003. His whereabouts could be accounted for. There was nothing concrete to connect him to the case, and investigators eventually ruled him out as a suspect. Joseph Edward Duncan III spent the rest of his life in prison, convicted of the Idaho murders and other crimes. He died of natural causes on the 28th of March 2021, without ever being charged in connection with Leeanna Warner. Whether he had any involvement in her disappearance, or whether his mention of her was simply the ramblings of a disturbed mind, remains unknown. Over the years, other leads emerged and faded. Police received more than 1,700 tips, following up on each one regardless of how unlikely it seemed. An inmate named Bruce Christensen confessed to killing Leanna, but he later recanted, and investigators determined his confession was false. Anonymous tips pointed to various individuals in the community, but none could be substantiated. In 2017, a man named Eugene Robert Finch was arrested for child sexual abuse after promising an 11-year-old girl a baby doll in exchange for inappropriate photographs. When police searched Finch's property, they found a box of Barbie dolls in the attic of his garage. The discovery was eerily similar to the Barbie dolls that Lyanna had received from the little old lady before her disappearance. Finch had also previously been arrested for having a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old girl from Carlton County, which is on the route to Chisum. The information was passed to the Chisum Police Department, but whether Finch had any connection to Leanna's case has never been established. The Warner family was destroyed by Leanna's disappearance. Christopher and Kaylin had moved to Chisum hoping for a fresh start, and instead they had experienced every parent's worst nightmare. The magnitude of the loss was impossible to comprehend. One moment, Lyanna was walking down the block, a familiar journey she had made many times before. The next moment, she was gone, swallowed by the summer evening as if she had never existed. In the weeks and months after Lyanna disappeared, Kaylin sat on the front steps of their home with the porch light on, night after night, waiting for her youngest child to come home. She could not accept that Lyanna was gone. She kept expecting to see her daughter's small form walking up the sidewalk, to hear her voice calling out, to feel her arms around her neck. The vigil became a ritual, a way of maintaining hope, a refusal to surrender to despair. Lyanna's disappearance completely broke their mother, her daughters would later say. She was never the same. The vibrant woman who had raised 3 daughters, who had built a life with Christopher, who had moved to Chisum full of hope, was replaced by someone hollowed out by grief. The trauma was all-consuming, affecting every aspect of her life. In October 2003, just months after Lyanna vanished, Kaylin was arrested and charged with a hit-and-run after allegedly striking Christopher with her car following an argument. The incident revealed the strain that the disappearance had placed on the family, the way grief can manifest as rage, the way trauma can fracture relationships. The family that had seemed so solid was coming apart. Eventually, the Warners made the difficult decision to leave Chisum. Christopher wanted to escape the constant reminders of what they had lost. the streets where Lyanna had played, the neighborhood where she had vanished. But Kaylin was torn. She was afraid that if they left, and if Lyanna somehow found her way back to the house, no one would be there. That fear stayed with her for years. I hadn't wanted to move away in the first place, Kaylin would later say. I was scared that if we left, if she came to the house, no one would be there. That pretty much sat with me the whole time. The years passed. The family relocated, trying to build a new life away from Chisum. But there is no moving on from the loss of a child. Every birthday was a reminder of the milestones Lyanna should have been reaching. Learning to read, losing her first tooth, starting first grade, making new friends. Every anniversary of June 14 was a wound reopened. A day marked not by celebration, but by grief. Every holiday was incomplete. A chair empty at the table. A stocking that would never be hung. A present that would never be opened. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children periodically released age-progressed photographs of Lyanna, computer-generated images showing what she might look like as she grew older. Each new image was a punch to the gut for her family. They saw their daughter transformed by software into a teenager, then a young woman, a person they had never met, a life they had never witnessed. Still to this day, I look for a 5-year-old, Kaylin would say. I can't get that out of my head, even though I know she'd be older. The case received sporadic media attention over the years. In 2006, Chris and Kaylin appeared on The Maury Povich Show, hoping that national television exposure might generate new leads. They sat on the stage and told their story to millions of viewers, describing the strange incidents before Lyanna's disappearance, pleading with anyone who had information to come forward. The appearance generated tips, but none led to Lyanna. Lyanna's case was featured on America's Most Wanted in July 2003, shortly after she vanished. The national exposure brought in calls from across the country, people who thought they might have seen a girl matching Lyanna's description, people who wanted to help. None of the tips panned out. The trail remained cold. In later years, true crime podcasts discovered Lyanna's case and brought it to new audiences. True Crime Garage released a 2-part series in August 2021. The Deck podcast featured Lyanna as the Ace of Hearts in their Minnesota deck of unsolved cases. People Magazine Investigates aired an episode on investigation discovery, allowing the Warner family to tell their story to a television audience. Each new program brought renewed attention, renewed tips, renewed hope. But the breakthrough never came. After being away for approximately 15 years, Kaylin moved back to Chisum. She and Christopher had divorced, and the separation gave her the freedom to return to the place where she had last seen her daughter. She felt a kind of peace being close by, even if that closeness was only to the site of her greatest loss. On the 10th of December 2022, Leeanna Warner died of stage 4 lung cancer. She had been diagnosed just 42 days earlier, 1 week after experiencing a moment of joy at her daughter Carly's wedding. The disease took her with brutal speed. She was in her early 50s, her life cut short before she could find the answers she had sought for nearly 20 years. In her final days, Kaylin's thoughts were on Lyanna. She had spent 19 years waiting for her daughter to come home, 19 years hoping for a phone call or a knock on the door that would end the nightmare. Now she was dying, and she would never know what had happened. The cruelty of it was almost unbearable. Before she died, Kaylin made her other daughters promise to continue the search. I remember she was crying hysterically, Whitney would later recall. I'm not dying. I'm not dying. But if I do die, I need you and Carly to find your sister. Give us the answers that we need. Don't stop searching. Bring her home. That's all I want from you. That's all I need from you. Carly and Whitney, now in their 30s, with families of their own, have taken up the search for their sister. They were just children when Lyanna disappeared, 10 and 9 years old, too young to fully understand what was happening but old enough to remember everything. Carly remembers riding her bike through the neighborhood that evening, calling her sister's name until her voice was hoarse. Whitney remembers the fear and confusion, the sense that the world had suddenly become dangerous in ways she could not comprehend. The trauma of that summer shaped their entire lives. Without their mother's guidance, it feels like they are starting from square one. Kaylin had been the keeper of the case, the one who followed up on leads, who maintained contact with investigators, who kept Lyanna's memory alive. Now that burden has passed to her daughters, and they are determined to carry it. There's something so different about a sister bond, Carly has said. We need the closure as a family. I think even the state of Minnesota, the Iron Range, everybody that's ever followed her story needs the closure. The sisters have embraced modern technology in their search. They've submitted their DNA to services like 2, 3, and Me and Ancestry, hoping that genetic genealogy might provide a breakthrough. The same technology that has solved decades-old cold cases might help them find their sister. If Leeanna is alive, if she was raised by another family, she might submit her own DNA out of curiosity about her ancestry. The databases would match her to her sisters, and the truth would be revealed. They hold on to the possibility that Lyanna is still alive, that she was taken by someone who wanted a child and has been raised by another family under another name. It has happened before. In 2022, a Texas woman named Melissa Highsmith was found alive and reunited with her biological family more than 50 years after she was abducted as a baby. The case was solved through DNA matching and genetic genealogy. If it could happen for Melissa, the sisters reason, it could happen for Lyanna. The sisters encourage anyone who believes they might be Lyanna to submit their DNA. If their sister is out there, if she has ever wondered about her origins, if she has felt that something about her history does not add up, science might provide the answer. A simple cheek swab could reunite a family that has been broken for more than 2 decades. In 2024, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a new age progression photograph of Lyanna, showing what she might look like at age 26. The image was featured on billboards in Chisum, a constant reminder to the community of the girl who vanished more than 2 decades ago. The photograph shows a young woman with features that echo the 5-year-old girl who disappeared, a face that might be walking the streets of any town in America, recognized by no one. The Chisum Police Department continues to investigate. New officers have joined the force over the years, trained on the details of Lyanna's disappearance, committed to finding answers for a case that predates their careers. The file remains open, the evidence preserved, the tips still welcomed. Advances in forensic technology, particularly in DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, offer hope that evidence which was useless in 2003 might yield information today. In 2025, Police Chief James Vukad stated that the case remains open, active, and a top priority. Our team continues to investigate all credible leads, including those made possible through advanced DNA profiling techniques, he said. Lyanna's story has touched the hearts of many, and we are committed to doing everything in our power to bring her home. Her family and this community deserve closure. While we have not had a major breakthrough to date, our efforts have never wavered, and we remain hopeful that one day we will find the answers we've been searching for. Lyanna's disappearance also changed how law enforcement in the region responds to child abductions. The case exposed gaps in the system, delays in coordination, limitations in resources. In the years that followed, local agencies worked to address these shortcomings. The Lake Superior Child Abduction Response Team, known as LSCART, was formed in 2016 and became operational in 2017. The team includes approximately 130 individuals from more than 20 agencies across St. Louis County, Carlton County in Minnesota, and Douglas County in Wisconsin. When a serious incident occurs, LSCART can rapidly deploy resources, bringing together law enforcement officers, search and rescue specialists, forensic experts, and victim advocates. The goal is simple: respond faster, coordinate better, leave no stone unturned. In this county, ever since the Warner case, we've not wanted to have a repeat of that, said investigator Nate Sathers. So if we can deploy resources quickly, make sure we're trained and ready to go, hopefully we can have a different outcome. The comparison to the Jacob Wetterling case is unavoidable. Jacob was an 11-year-old boy from St. Joseph, Minnesota, who was abducted in 1989. His case remained unsolved for 27 years, becoming one of the most famous missing children cases in American history. In 2016, Danny Heinrich confessed to kidnapping and killing Jacob, leading investigators to his remains. The resolution of the Wetterling case, after nearly 3 decades of uncertainty, offers a sliver of hope for the Warner family. If that case could be solved after so long, perhaps Lyanna's can be too. But there are differences. The Wetterling case had witnesses who saw the abduction, a suspect who was identified early on, physical evidence at the scene. Lyanna's case has none of these things. The most significant thing that always stood out about this case was the lack of information, former Police Chief Manor has said. We still only have theories, as we have no evidence to say what happened. As of today, Leeanna Warner remains missing. If she is alive, she would be 27 years old. She has been missing for more than 22 years. Over 1,700 tips have been investigated. No physical evidence has ever been found. No body has been recovered. No one has been charged with any crime related to her disappearance. The question that haunts everyone who has followed this case is simple. What happened to Leeanna Warner? Investigators and true crime researchers have developed several theories, each supported by some evidence, none proven conclusively. The lack of physical evidence, the absence of witnesses, the sheer mystery of how a child could vanish in broad daylight from a quiet neighborhood has left room for speculation and debate. The most likely scenario, according to investigators, is that she was abducted by a stranger. The bloodhounds losing her scent at the edge of the road suggests she got into a vehicle, either willingly or by force. The fact that she was never seen again, despite massive search efforts and nationwide publicity, suggests that whoever took her did not want her to be found. Stranger abductions are statistically rare, accounting for only a tiny fraction of missing children cases. But they do happen, and they are among the most difficult crimes to solve. She may have been killed shortly after her abduction, her body hidden somewhere in the vast wilderness of northern Minnesota. The Iron Range offers countless places to conceal remains, deep forests that stretch for miles without a road or a trail, abandoned mines that honeycomb the earth like a maze, lakes so deep and dark that nothing can be seen beneath the surface. A body disposed of in such a location might never be found, might decompose and disappear, leaving no trace for searchers to discover. It is a terrible possibility, but it must be considered. Or she may be alive. She may have been taken by someone who wanted a child, raised under another name, living today with no memory of her first 5 years, or the family that has never stopped searching for her. The strange incidents before her disappearance, the Barbie dolls from an unknown source, the talk of a new family, the fear of something outside her window, might suggest that someone had groomed her, had prepared her psychologically for a new life with new people. Black market adoption exists, though it is rare. People desperate for children have been known to do terrible things to acquire them. Some have speculated about human trafficking, the possibility that Leanna was taken and sold into a network that exploits children. Investigators have found no evidence to support this theory, but it cannot be entirely ruled out. The sophistication required to abduct a child and transport her out of the area without leaving any trace suggests someone with planning and resources, someone who knew what they were doing. The connection between the pre-disappearance incidents and the abduction itself remains unclear. If someone was grooming Leanna, who was it? The little old lady who gave her the Barbie dolls was never identified. The source of Leanna's talk about a new family was never established. The monsters outside her window were never explained. These incidents suggest a pattern of contact between Leanna and someone unknown to her parents, but the identity of that person remains a mystery. Matthew Curtis, the neighbor who was found with child pornography and later died in an apparent suicide, remains a figure of interest despite his death. His proximity to the Warner home, his possession of illegal images of children, his death the day before his court appearance, all raise questions that can never be answered now. Did he have something to do with Leanna's disappearance? Did he know something he was not telling? Did his suicide prevent the truth from ever coming to light? These questions have no answers. But these are theories, not facts. The truth is that no one knows what happened to Leeanna Warner. The truth is that 22 years have passed without answers. The truth is that a mother died without knowing the fate of her daughter, and 2 sisters have inherited a search that may never end. If you have any information about the disappearance of Leeanna Warner, please contact the Chisum Police Department at 218-254-7915. You can also contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THELOST. Leanna Marie Warner. Born the 21st of January 1998. Missing since the 14th of June 2003. Last seen walking on Southwest 2nd or 3rd Street in Chisum, Minnesota, between 5 and 5:15 inches the evening. She was 5 years old, approximately 3 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed about 48 pounds. She had brown hair, cut in a short bob, and brown eyes. She had a mole above her left ankle and a dimple on her left shoulder. She was wearing a sleeveless blue denim dress with a belt, orange underwear, and a flower earring with a red garnet in her right ear. She was barefoot. Her family called her Beaner. Lyanna, if by some miracle you are out there, if you are alive and watching this, your family wants you to know that they have never stopped looking. Your mother searched for you until the day she died. Your sisters are searching for you still. They have submitted their DNA to Ancestry Services, hoping that you might do the same. They do not blame you for anything. They do not want anything from you except to know that you are safe. Please reach out. Please let them know you are okay. And if Lyanna is gone, if she met the fate that many fear, then let this video be a reminder that she existed. She was a real little girl, a fearless tomboy who loved playing in the mud, a girly girl who wore a sparkly princess crown, a 5-year-old who deserved to grow up and live her life. She was loved. Her life mattered. And the truth about what happened to her matters too. Someone out there knows something. Someone has kept a secret for 22 years. That secret is a burden, and the burden grows heavier with every passing year. It is not too late to set it down. It is not too late to speak the truth. Perhaps you were afraid to come forward in 2003, afraid of what might happen to you, afraid of the consequences. But circumstances change. Relationships end. Loyalties shift. The person you were protecting may no longer deserve your protection. The fear that kept you silent may no longer be relevant. Time changes everything, including the calculations we make about risk and reward. Perhaps you did not realize the significance of what you saw or heard. A car driving through the neighborhood, a man acting strangely, a conversation overheard in a bar or at a family gathering. Details that seemed meaningless at the time might be the key to solving this case. Investigators have spent 22 years trying to piece together what happened to Leeanna Warner. The piece they need might be in your memory. Perhaps you are the one who took her. Perhaps you have lived with the knowledge of what you did for more than 2 decades, carrying the weight of a child's disappearance, wondering when the knock on the door will come. The technology of criminal investigation has advanced enormously since 2003. DNA analysis, genetic genealogy, digital forensics. They are solving cold cases that were once considered unsolvable. The walls may be closing in. It might be better to come forward on your own terms than to wait for the inevitable. Or perhaps Lyanna is alive, and you are the person raising her. Perhaps you took her believing you were giving her a better life. Perhaps you have convinced yourself that what you did was justified. But she has a family that has never stopped searching for her. She has sisters who submitted their DNA to Ancestry Services, hoping to find her. She has a right to know who she really is, where she came from, the people who loved her before you took her away. Thank you for watching. If this case affected you, please share this video. The power of the internet can reach places that investigators cannot, can find people who have hidden for decades, can bring the truth to light. Every share, every comment, every view increases the chance that someone with information will see Lyanna's face and decide to speak. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a case. Leave a comment below telling us your thoughts on what might have happened to Lyanna. And if you know anything at all, please contact the authorities. The Chisum Police Department is waiting for your call. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is ready to receive your tip. You can remain anonymous if you are afraid. But please, speak up. 2 sisters made a promise to their dying mother. They promised to find their little sister, to give their family the answers they need, to bring Lyanna home. They have spent years honoring that promise, searching and hoping and refusing to give up. Help them keep it. A mother waited 19 years for her daughter to come home. She never got to see that day. She died not knowing what happened. Do not let her daughters wait another 19 years. Do not let this case go unsolved for another generation. Somewhere out there, the truth is waiting to be found. Somewhere, someone knows what happened to Leeanna Warner. Somewhere, the silence can be broken. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, every missing child deserves to be found.